A 22-year-old spent $10.69 on a domain name and accidentally stopped the worst cyber attack the world had ever seen. On Friday morning, May 12, 2017, doctors at NHS hospitals across England watched their screens turn red. A message in broken English demanded $300 in Bitcoin. Within minutes, 80 hospital trusts lost access to patient records, surgical schedules, and diagnostic systems. 19,494 medical appointments were canceled that weekend. 5 hospitals were forced to divert ambulances to other facilities. Surgeons could not access imaging scans. Cancer referrals were frozen. And this was just one country. In the next 24 hours, the WannaCry ransomware worm tore through 230,000 computers across 150 countries, shutting down factories, railways, telecoms, and government agencies simultaneously. Total damages reached between $4 billion and $8 billion. It was the fastest spreading cyber attack in recorded history. And it was stopped by a single person, a 22-year-old researcher working from his bedroom, who spent exactly $10.69. WannaCry was not a typical ransomware attack. Most ransomware requires a victim to click a malicious link, download an infected attachment, or open a phishing email. WannaCry needed none of that. It was a worm. A worm is a self-replicating program that spreads from machine to machine automatically, without any human interaction. The moment WannaCry landed on one computer, it scanned the entire local network for other vulnerable machines. When it found them, it copied itself over, encrypted their files, and started scanning again. No clicks, no emails, no downloads. Just being connected to the same network as an infected machine was enough. The ransom demand itself was modest by cybercrime standards. $300 in Bitcoin to decrypt your files. If you waited more than 3 days, the price doubled to $600. After 7 days, the attackers threatened permanent deletion. The red ransom screen, with its countdown timer and 2 Bitcoin wallet addresses, became one of the most recognized images in cybersecurity history. Train stations displayed it on departure boards. Hospital monitors showed it in emergency rooms. Office workers across 150 countries photographed it and shared it on social media in real time. But the truly terrifying part of WannaCry was not the ransom amount or the countdown timer. It was the weapon that powered the worm underneath. WannaCry's spreading engine was built on a cyber weapon called EternalBlue. EternalBlue exploited a critical vulnerability in the Windows Server Message Block Protocol, known as SMB. SMB is the system that lets computers on a network share files and connect to printers. It runs silently in the background of virtually every Windows machine connected to any network. The vulnerability existed in every version of Windows from XP through Server 2008 R2. Billions of devices were exposed, and the National Security Agency had known about this flaw for more than 5 years. Rather than reporting the vulnerability to Microsoft so it could be patched, the NSA's Tailored Access Operations Unit weaponized it. They built EternalBlue as an offensive hacking tool and used it quietly for years to penetrate foreign government networks, intelligence targets, and critical infrastructure. Then, in August 2016, a group calling themselves the Shadow Brokers surfaced online. They claimed to possess the NSA's entire cyber arsenal. They tried to auction the tools for $1 million in Bitcoin. When nobody paid, they started leaking the tools for free. On April 14, 2017, they released a package called Lost in Translation. Inside was EternalBlue. Suddenly, the NSA's most powerful network exploitation tool was available to every criminal, nation-state, and amateur hacker on the planet. Microsoft had actually identified the threat and released security patch MS17-010 on March 14, 2017. That was exactly 2 months before WannaCry struck. But patching is not instantaneous. Millions of computers, particularly in hospitals running legacy medical equipment, factories with embedded industrial systems, and government agencies stuck on outdated procurement cycles, had never installed the update. The stage was set. The first confirmed infections appeared around 7:44 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated on May 12, hitting Spanish telecom giant Telefónica. Employees at the company's Madrid headquarters were ordered to shut down their computers immediately and disconnect from the network. Many were sent home. Within 4 hours, WannaCry had crossed borders, oceans, and time zones, reaching 150 countries simultaneously. In England, the NHS experienced its worst crisis since its founding. 80 out of 236 hospital trusts were directly affected. 603 primary care organizations, including general practices and clinics, reported disruptions. 139 patients requiring urgent care were diverted from emergency departments. 5 hospitals were so overwhelmed they asked ambulances to take patients elsewhere. The estimated cost to the NHS alone exceeded $120 million. In Germany, passengers at Deutsche Bahn train stations looked up at departure boards and saw WannaCry's ransom note instead of train schedules. In France, Renault shut down several factories. In Japan, Nissan halted production at its Sunderland plant. FedEx's European subsidiary, TNT Express, was devastated. The company later disclosed $300 million in losses from the attack. In China, the scale was staggering. Over 30,000 organizations were infected, including major universities, government offices, and gas stations. PetroChina, one of the world's largest oil companies, could not process card payments at fuel stations for days. Drivers pulled up to pumps and found handwritten signs saying cash only. Russia was hit hard as well, despite early speculation that Russian hackers might be responsible. The Interior Ministry confirmed 1,000 of its computers were encrypted. Telecom operator Megafon reported outages, and parts of Russian railways went offline. The ransom payments themselves were almost comically small. The attackers collected roughly $140,000 in Bitcoin total, spread across 3 wallet addresses. The damage they inflicted was approximately 50,000 times that amount. WannaCry was never about the money. It was a weapon fired without a targeting system. While governments scrambled and corporations went into crisis mode, a 22-year-old malware researcher named Marcus Hutchins was sitting in his bedroom in Devon, England, eating lunch. Online, he went by the handle Malware Tech. He was not employed by any government agency or major tech company. He ran a small cybersecurity blog and spent his days analyzing malware samples. When WannaCry started making headlines, Hutchins obtained a sample and began reverse engineering it. Buried deep in the code, he found something unusual. Before encrypting files on a new machine, the malware attempted to connect to a specific web domain, a long, seemingly random string of 41 characters followed by .com. If the domain was live and responded, the malware would stop executing. If it got no response, it would proceed to encrypt everything. The domain was not registered. Nobody owned it. Hutchins registered it on the domain provider Namecheap. The total cost was $10.69. His initial assumption was that he had created what security researchers call a sinkhole, a way to redirect malware traffic to a server he controlled so he could monitor infection rates. He pointed the domain at a server and watched the traffic pour in. Connections from hundreds of thousands of infected machines worldwide started hitting his domain within minutes. Then something extraordinary happened. New WannaCry infections began dropping to near zero. The malware was checking whether that domain existed. When Hutchins registered it and it started responding, WannaCry's built-in kill switch activated. Every new copy of the worm that checked the domain simply stopped. It is believed the programmers included this mechanism as an emergency shutdown or possibly as a way to detect whether the malware was running inside a researcher's sandbox environment. Hutchins did not realize what he had done for several hours. He spent the afternoon confused, watching infection rates flatline while Twitter exploded with speculation. It took the broader cybersecurity community to piece it together and confirm that registering a single $10.69 domain name had halted the most destructive cyber attack in progress. It did not decrypt machines that were already infected, but it prevented millions of additional computers from being hit. In the weeks and months that followed, the hunt for WannaCry's creators intensified. Intelligence agencies from the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Japan conducted a joint investigation. By December 2017, all 6 nations publicly attributed the attack to North Korea's Lazarus Group, a state-sponsored hacking unit also known as APT-38 or Hidden Cobra. The Lazarus Group was already notorious. They were behind the 2014 hack of Sony Pictures, which leaked unreleased films, executive emails, and employee data in retaliation for a movie satirizing North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. They also orchestrated the 2016 Bangladesh bank heist, where they exploited the SWIFT banking network to steal $81 million. In September 2018, the U.S. Department of Justice unsealed a criminal complaint against Park Jin-hyuk, a North Korean computer programmer identified as a key Lazarus Group operative. He was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and computer fraud in connection with WannaCry, the Sony hack, and the Bangladesh bank theft. Microsoft responded to WannaCry with an unprecedented move. They released emergency security patches for Windows XP and Windows Server 2003, operating systems that had been officially retired and unsupported for years. Microsoft President Brad Smith wrote a blistering blog post, comparing the NSA's loss of EternalBlue to the U.S. military having its Tomahawk missiles stolen. He called for a digital Geneva Convention to prevent governments from stockpiling cyber weapons. The EternalBlue exploit did not die with WannaCry. Just 6 weeks later, it powered NotPetya, an attack attributed to Russian military intelligence that masqueraded as ransomware but was actually designed to destroy data permanently. NotPetya caused an estimated $10 billion in global damages, making it the single most destructive cyber attack in history. Shipping giant Maersk lost its entire global network. Pharmaceutical company Merck lost $870 million. As for Marcus Hutchins, the man who saved the internet, his story took a darker turn. In August 2017, just 3 months after stopping WannaCry, the FBI arrested him in Las Vegas. The charges were unrelated to WannaCry. They involved banking malware called Kronos that Hutchins had written and sold as a teenager in 2014 and 2015. He pleaded guilty in April 2019 and was sentenced to time served with 1 year of supervised release. The judge acknowledged that his actions in stopping WannaCry had been an extraordinary act of public service. WannaCry exposed 3 fundamental truths about the state of global cybersecurity. First, the fix existed before the attack. Microsoft released the patch on March 14th, 2 full months before WannaCry struck on May 12th. Every single infected machine could have been protected with a routine software update. The failure was not a lack of technology. It was a failure of organizational discipline, procurement cycles, and basic IT hygiene. Second, when governments build and stockpile offensive cyber weapons instead of reporting the vulnerabilities they discover, they put the entire world at risk. The NSA created EternalBlue to spy on adversaries. When it leaked, it shut down hospitals. Governments face a fundamental choice: protect their citizens by disclosing vulnerabilities or endanger them by hoarding exploits for intelligence purposes. WannaCry showed what happens when hoarding wins. Third, critical infrastructure, especially healthcare, remains dangerously exposed. When WannaCry hit, the NHS was running thousands of machines on Windows XP, an operating system that was 16 years old and had been 3 years past its official end of support. Medical devices with embedded Windows systems could not be easily updated. IT budgets were stretched thin. There was no centralized patching authority. WannaCry was not a sophisticated attack. The code was sloppy. The kill switch was an amateur mistake. The ransom collection was poorly designed. A more competent attacker using the same vulnerability could have caused damage on a scale that is difficult to comprehend. The lesson is uncomfortable but clear. We got lucky, and the next time, we probably will not be. If this story gripped you, subscribe to Cyber Decoded. Next, We are revealing the $10 billion attack that made WannaCry look like a rehearsal.